Hello, welcome to the Mark Montgomery Show. I'm Mark Montgomery. A great deal since we talked last has happened. I'm no longer on the radio on 1380 KTKZ in Sacramento or Money 105.5 FM during the week, Monday through Friday. This is all part of a much bigger plan, so I thought I would share with you somewhat of what has happened here, because I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. It's always much more complicated than what's on the surface. But a little history. About 4 years ago, close to 4 years ago, I went on the radio on 1380 KTKZ on a Saturday morning with a half-hour show. That ultimately built into a 2-hour show on Saturday mornings. It became ultimately the #1 show in the region, the Sacramento region, on KTKZ. There wasn't another show on Saturday mornings that beat the Small Biz Talk Radio show. And matter of fact, we beat consistently the much larger channels, which was 650 and 1530 on Saturday mornings, the clear channels out of Sacramento, during that spot on Saturday mornings. And so, consequently, they offered me a Monday through Friday a couple of years ago on 105.5 FM, a brand new station in Sacramento. And frankly, we did okay with that. It was building from ground zero to build the show, but it certainly did build the numbers. However, the goal is not just to be a popular radio program within a small area, which the Sacramento region is, KTKZ and Money 105.5 FM. The goal is to take the program statewide. Always has been the goal. The purpose of the program, of course, is to not only support and wake up small business owners throughout the state of California that they truly could have a powerful voice if they just would stick together, cooperate with one another in an organization that truly was an activist fighting organization that truly supported business. So many organizations today don't support business. They support anything and everything they can. They like to wine and dine, the business network aspect of it. And in the meantime, the progressive liberals are running just roughshod over the state of California and ruining the business climate here in the state of California. So the goal is to take this fight throughout the state of California, from the south to the north. The next step that I will be taking, and by the way, again, I want to reinforce the fact and repeat that I'm no longer on the air in Sacramento. Now, what happened was that Salem Communications ultimately decided they did not want to move forward with my show once I gave them notice, and that's okay. There were other issues. There were always many issues involved with this. I felt at the time it was better just to make that clean break and move on and prepare for the new show. That's why I'm not on the air. Now, beginning January 5th in this new year, Saturday morning, we will be on the air, as at least it stands right now, and if anything changes, I will update you. And you can always go to smallbiztalkradio.com. Updates will be there. They're working on it right now. If anything changes, it'll be there. You can also get on my mail list by just emailing me, mark@smallbiz, that's B-I-Z, talkradio.com, and when we send out information, you'll get it. As it stands, January 5th, Saturday morning, we will be on the air on Clear Channel, KSTE 650, from 6 to 9 a.m. Now, that's where it stands at the moment. We are currently talking about some other aspects of what perhaps can happen with the show also, but this is an opportunity. 650 not only reaches the Jackson area, and I don't know how far it extends up here clearly, it also extends into the Bay Area, the San Jose, Oakland, even up to through Santa Rosa, on over up through Redding and up on into the mountains. I don't know how far it ultimately goes, but when you look at the coverage map, it is massive. So that is the next step in the growth of Small Biz Talk Radio. I'm currently lining up sponsors. This is an expensive venture, folks. So we're looking at sponsors. I have sponsors currently that are staying with me. I have new sponsors that have already, once they've learned that I'm no longer at KSTE, or pardon me, KTKV, KZ, 1380, that they are now coming on board on KSTE 650. They want the bigger footprint is what they want. They don't want the smaller Sacramento area. They want their market to expand on into the Redding and the Bay Area and on up into the hills. We're going to be able to give them that. Now I'm hoping that this will ultimately expand into a daily show, maybe Monday through Friday on KSTE, also 650, and take it from there. Hopefully we'll end up on some other stations throughout the Valley, Bay Area, Los Angeles, but this should be the first step in that growth that we are hoping to experience. So with that said, everything is fine. The program did exactly what it was supposed to do. First off, just as a small business owner, never have done radio before, gave me the opportunity to prove to myself that I could do it and at least develop some skills so I can continue to do it. So we will be moving onwards and upwards, with this program. So again, if you want additional information, just go to smallbiztalkradio.com or email me, mark@smallbiztalkradio.com. So anyway, with that said, there were a number of things happening in California, and one of the things that is currently happening here in California, of course, and we've all noticed it, is at the gas pump. I've talked about this for actually a number of years, probably ever since I've been on the radio on Saturday mornings. We've talked about the energy, the cost of energy, and the energy plan here in California. We are so vulnerable here in California. I am amazed that that's happening right now hasn't happened a few years ago. There are reasons that we are experiencing these gas prices right now, and it's all, frankly, political. And what's amazing to me is that you can count on the politicians to jump on board and say those dirty oil companies, they don't know what they're doing, they're manipulating, and we're going to investigate. That's what we're going to do. We're going to investigate. And so they're delusional. Well, they're delusional, yes, they are. But they must understand that they are the cause of this whole thing. And you should understand they are the cause of the whole mess that we find ourselves currently in. The oil companies have absolutely nothing to do with this. Going back to the Chevron fire, the Chevron refinery fire, this is just one of the steps. They have their explosion, gas prices go up, something like 250,000 barrels of oil are no longer processed at the Chevron refinery, hurts the gas production. But that's not actually where the problem lies. The problem is with the fact that, number one, they need to modernize the facility, and they can't. They could, but then that opens the door for environmental lawsuits, all kinds of lawsuits, which is going to drag out the time of the remodeling, the bringing up to date of this refinery, which frankly I think was built in something like 1940 or before that, and was grandfathered in on the new environmental rules. Frankly, they need to waive the environmental rules and let them modernize the plant and grandfather it in again based on at least those standards instead of working on standards in a facility they're back in the 1940s or before. I think it actually goes further back than that. So the bottom line is, and that's just one of many problems the oil companies are facing here in California. There were at one time 14 refineries here in the state of California. There are now 12. All of these refineries have issues as far as maintenance, etc. The reason being, and we hear about this all the time, and that is that the refineries must close down for maintenance. And if one has say in this case, the Chevron had a fire, an explosion, another refinery went down, I can't remember the reason offhand. One in Los Angeles, the Exxon refinery went down because of electrical problems and was going to have to crank back up. And there's another one that is down for maintenance. Now, the reason for the maintenance, folks, one of a number of reasons, is the gas mixture that we use here in California. The winter, you get the winter blend and the summer blend. Now, when the refineries switch over, in other words, it's supposed to be October 31st, they switch into the winter blend, and prices will drop. And matter of fact, the summer blend runs about 35 cents per gallon, folks, here in California. That's another factor of why California gas is more expensive. Now, the other thing that comes into play is that when the refineries, they go through this maintenance aspect, because when they switch from one blend to the other, they have to change things over in order to do that. They have to recalibrate, they have to do all kinds of things with the refinery before they can switch over to the new blend. Now, there's only 12 refineries right now producing this blend. So, and you might be saying, well, my gosh, why can't we just go to Nevada or Arizona or Texas or whatever it may be and just get gas from them? Well, the reason being, we can't. The only refineries that produce the California blend is California refineries. No one else. So we have no ability to go to Texas or any other state and buy gas from those refineries. We are stuck with the California refineries. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we come back from break. You're listening to the Mark Montgomery Show, and I'm Mark Montgomery.
The Mark Montgomery Show.
Welcome back, folks. I'm Mark Montgomery, and we're talking about the gas prices and the shortage of gas and what's going on here in California. And bottom line is, we can lay this all at the feet of the politicians, the lawmakers. And you may say, oh, come on, Mark, it's the dirty oil companies, they're manipulating the price. No. This all goes back, frankly, to our gas blend for summer and winter. That's a big chunk of what's going on right now. And environmental regulations preventing refineries such as the Chevron refinery from modernizing. It's as this particular article happened to say, it says, energy analysts blame the high prices on the perfect storm of supply disruptions that began August 6th with a fire at the Chevron refinery in Richmond, a key piece of the state's petroleum infrastructure. The latest spike followed more refinery troubles, including an October 1 power outage of Exxon's Mobil refinery in Torrance. The refinery has since resumed normal operations. But the bottom line is, we are vulnerable to the slightest little change, in our oil production, whether it's a refinery, a fire, or whatever it may be. So, of course, the answer is this. Dianne Feinstein, on Monday, questioned whether the record prices are truly the result of a shortage. She fired off a letter to the Federal Trade Commission seeking a probe into possible market manipulation. Can't just be environmental rules and gas control of how gas is going to be made in this state. It has nothing to do with that. I mean, it has nothing to do with that. It's got to be the dirty oil companies are manipulating things. So anyway, then it says, late Monday, Senator Barbara Boxer weighed in, asking the U.S. Department of Justice Oil and Gas Price Fraud Working Group to investigate. So we're asking, isn't that the answer always? If something is wrong, and the politicians, the lawmakers, know that they actually caused this. Now, maybe it was a few years ago that certain things were done legislatively and through regulation and manipulation and all these things, but now it comes to fruition, and all of a sudden a big spotlight shone on it. It can't be the lawmakers' fault. It's got to be, well, the gas producers. That's the fault. That's whose fault it is, and we've got to investigate to protect our civilians, right? Our consumers. And it goes on, and it's been going on. Matter of fact, there was, I think, something interesting in this article somewhere. Oh, here it is. It says, I'm old enough to remember, this is a fellow that, Jack Pitney says, I'm old enough to remember the same call from about 40 years ago, Pitney said. I remember being stuck in gas lines in 1973, and politicians then were calling for investigations. It's standard operating procedure. Now, what they're also worried about is this may actually weigh on Governor Brown's Proposition 30, the tax increase, because people are going to be waking up and going, wow, man, I can't afford to pay more taxes. I'm paying too much at the pump. Well, what they ought to be thinking about at the same time is we are also paying more sales tax at the gas pump because of the bumped up prices. So couldn't we just call this maybe dirty politics or dirty lawmakers instead of dirty oil companies? Because that's really where the blame lies. Taxes are too high here in California. Energy, the cost of energy is way too high here in California, and it's all because of energy policy here in California. It's the regulations and the mandates. It's the inability for an oil company to maybe build a new modern refinery. Matter of fact, it's been 40 years since a refinery's been built here in California. Now, they are building brand new refineries everywhere else but this country. So won't be long before pretty soon the refineries will pretty much just be, well, they'll just be archaic. You know, they won't be able to produce what we need, and we'll be importing gas from China or India or somewhere else, Mexico, where they can build new modern refineries to keep up with our new gas blends, etc. The other answer, and lawmakers know this, and we've talked about this for years. I've talked about it ever since I've been on the radio. How about just one universal blend? If this is necessary, I'm not so sure it is. But if it's necessary, well, by the way, just one side note. Ethanol. We talk about pollution. We are having to drive more miles on a tank of gas because ethanol gets somewhere between 20 and 30% less, maybe more, miles per gallon than straight gas does. So are you telling me because we have to burn more gas that we're going to get less pollution? I don't think so, because we should be getting higher mileage out of every gas tank we fill up. But we're not because of environmental mandates, ethanol. Now, when you look at the energy going into producing ethanol, the amount of water, the amount of gas that's necessary to produce ethanol doesn't really make any sense. This is all another big government subsidy program to the farm, the corn belt, etc. That's what this is all about. And it's no different here in California. We are subsidizing all these environmental, the solar and the wind and everything else, to our energy cost in this state has dramatically gone higher. At the same time, we are creating, as this article said, the perfect storm, and this won't be the last time this happens. There will be another refinery go down, and we will be right back in the same situation because we are losing our ability to spread any cost or supply interruption. So what's the answer on this? If they are going to mandate, which they've done, a winter blend and a summer blend gasoline that only California refineries can make because California's blend is different than anything else in the country, the answer to this situation would be, if you have to go this direction, is to have one blend nationally. Now, you may say, Mark, the areas of this country are different. Well, okay, fine. If that's going to be your answer, then I would say, all right, well, let's have an East Coast blend, a West Coast blend, and a Heartland blend, maybe. 3 blends instead of a lot of different blends till we become just a world into our own here in California, and we're going to suffer the consequences. If we had a national blend, we could go to Texas, we could go to Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, wherever, if we had a supply interruption here in this state, and we could just buy the gas anywhere else to offset it. If we lost a refinery that maybe the whole thing blows up, well, at least we can bring gas in from other areas to offset that shortage. Right at this moment, we do not have that capability because California knows everything. They are best in the country. They know more than anyone else in the country. They know their blend is the best blend. It's the only blend that we can possibly use. So therefore, we are a world unto ourselves here in California, and we will suffer the consequences ourselves because no one else could help us if they wanted to. Now, the other option would have been, even when this first happened, was to go ahead and waive the requirement for the winter blend. The problem is when you change over, again, from the summer blend to the winter blend or the winter blend to the summer blend, you now have maintenance issues. You have refinery shutdown issues to make that change over, so you're interrupting the whole supply process in itself, the manufacturing process. This is a huge expense to the oil companies, and guess who ultimately pays it? Who pays the cost of all the changeovers these refineries have to go through? You do. It's really simple. And we have probably the most expensive, maybe the second, cost of energy of anywhere in this country. We pay more at the gas pump. We pay more to heat and cool our homes. We are the most expensive around. Now, this also equates, can you imagine that you are an energy-intensive manufacturing company? Maybe you have a big fleet of trucks with your company, and all of a sudden gas is spiking $1 a gallon or more. Do you think that's going to hurt your bottom line in your company to maybe think, gosh, maybe I'd better move to Texas because they have better gas supplies in Texas than here, and it's far less expensive in Texas than it is here? Do you think that might just enter the decision-making process of whether you're going to stay in California or you're going to move out of California, or if you're going to actually be a company moving into California, or, you know what, just throw in the towel and close your door? Because I don't see this state with this current government going any other direction than it's currently going. When you look at the number of bills and regulations, how many that are listening to this program right now know what the 852 bills that Jerry Brown signed, something like that, know for sure what's in them? All 852 bills, and how it's going to affect your life somewhere down the line. 800 and something bills they signed into law just this session, folks. What does that tell you about California? The average is around somewhere around 800 to 1,000 a year. 10 years, 10,000 new laws, bills, regulations, whatever it may be. And you think that we're going to be able to continue business as usual in the state of California and reduce cost? Or do we need to reduce the amount of regulations and mandates and get the government pushed out of the way? That's the goal of this program, to just try and get people, just think, I'm not trying to say be a Democrat or Republican, independent, libertarian, left or right. In my opinion, this is not a left or right issue. This is a survival issue here in the state of California. This is all about having a quality of life for not only ourselves, but our kids and our grandchildren here in the state of California. We are now the socialist state of California. We are the frog in the warming and actually kind of boiling water. We're almost dead, and it won't be long before we are, and it will be too late. Folks, you've been listening to the Mark Montgomery Show. We got another segment to go, and we're going to talk about ADA laws when we come back. We'll be right back. I'm Mark Montgomery.
The Mark Montgomery Show.
Mark Montgomery, and we're talking about refinery shutting down, the cost of gas lines in Los Angeles, and frankly, they're taking gas from Northern California, moving to Southern California. And the big reason, we have one blend of gas here in the state of California, and we cannot reach out of state for additional supplies. But as a side note to all of that the cost of energy in this state, I can go to one company that recently announced that they are moving out of state, and that is Campbell Soup. And that made big news. Now, there's many other companies that are leaving the state. There's companies that you don't hear about. There's 225,000 people a year leaving the state of California right now. That's huge. But let's just take Campbell Soup. The news said that, the news media, that, well, it's just because their factory, their manufacturing plant was now just too old. It was the most expensive factory in the country to produce the soups. And think about that for a moment. Now, why didn't they modernize it? I mean, they've modernized and pumped money into other plants. All companies do, if they want to stay in a given location. Now, why didn't they modernize the plant here in Sacramento, here in California? partly because they knew sooner or later they were going to have to move. To refurbish that plant would have been probably new environmental impact reports. They would have had permits. The cost of those permits would have been enormous in the city of Sacramento. The union situation here in the state of California. All of these issues, but there's an issue that no one really talked about much. There's many issues. Workers' comp, you could name many of them. But one of the items that fits into what we've just been talking about and what I've talked about on the radio numerous times, cost of energy. You know, to cook soups takes a tremendous amount of energy. They also made it was another company, but on the location, right in that location, was a company that made the cans, you know, for the soup. Energy intensive manufacturing companies. The cost of energy was critical. Now, one of the things that hasn't been said, and it probably hit the Campbell's plant, between 3 and 6 o'clock, I believe it is, because of our new smart meters that are on now businesses, etc., the cost of energy goes up dramatically between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It goes through for a kilowatt, you might start off at 10 or 12 cents per kilowatt. Am I right on that? I can't remember. I get mixed up on my electrical designations here, but I believe it was 10 cents per kilowatt. In the afternoon, on some of the manufacturing companies here, and they've told me this, goes to 40 cents per kilowatt. That's a huge increase. I know plants that are closing at 3 o'clock, between 3 and 6 now. So they just let the workers go. They're working a part day, and that's it. They get as much done as they can because of the cost of energy. Now, think about Campbell's soup for a moment. Man, they got all that energy flowing through there, and all of a sudden it goes from 10 cents to 40 cents. That's an enormous cost to them. That drives the cost of their soups up. And the soup business right now, I understand, is kind of in a state of flux. It's not doing as well as it did before. Campbell's is even switching how they do certain things. But the bottom line is this was the most expensive plant in the nation to operate that Campbell's has. And they have something like 30 plants around the country or something. That it's the most expensive one, the oldest one. They didn't want to refurbish, modernize the plant. Why? Because it doesn't make sense to do business in California. They cannot be competitive. They cannot produce the soups. And what they saw was the handwriting on the wall. There's something else coming down the line. Cap and trade. So not only is your cost, and by the way, all of you listening to this program are going to feel this. You've got the cost of energy as it is today, and you're going to have the cost of energy next year, all because of cap and trade. And you're also going to see more and more, well, you're going to see an increase in the cost of energy due to surcharges here and there for green energy. You're subsidizing your neighbor's solar panels, which they'll get their money back maybe in 30 years. You're subsidizing many things having to do with green industries out there. Matter of fact, there was another article yesterday, I think it was, talked about a plant that they pumped. Well, it was the Volt battery plant for the Volt electric car. $150 million, and they haven't produced a battery yet. And matter of fact, they furloughed all the workers because the Volt's such a disappointment they can't sell them. And the batteries they have put in them are from South Korea, I believe it is. So here again, millions, billions put out chasing these dreams, picking winners and losers, all much of it because of political cronyism, going on. Giving favors to your friends that donated money into your campaign. So anyway, it just goes on and on and on. The cost of energy, folks, is huge. And I've said ever since I've been on the radio now for a number of years, I have said the real key to our success in this country and here in the state of California is cheap, reliable, abundant energy. And we've gone in the opposite direction. What do they ask us to do constantly? Conserve, conserve, conserve. You can only conserve to a point, and there's also a point to be made. Why are you asking me to do this? Why can't we live our lives the way we want to live them? We have the energy. And you say, well, yeah, but in 300 years we may run out of natural gas, or we might run out of oil. Well, that's a big if, and in the meantime, you still should be producing. We always have nuclear. They're close to breakthroughs in fusion. But nope, we're looking at little solar panels and windmills. People need to think through this just a little bit. Neither one of them actually produce the kinds of energy that we need. And matter of fact, there was a report here probably 6 or 7 months ago that said that 20 years from now, here in the state of California, the goal is being 30% of our energy production will be from renewable energy. But in 20 years, only 1% we're going to still be at that 1% where we will never produce enough wind and solar energy to do what's necessary to do everything that we need here in California, the manufacturing and all the energy needs we have. So anyway, with that, I don't want to spend any more time on that at the moment, because it was something that happened here about a week ago that I thought was, it goes back to a movie one of my favorite movies from years ago was Independence Day. I don't know how many of you remember that movie or that have seen it, but there's one scene that one of the actors, he was the father of these kids. He was a crop duster, a Vietnam veteran, and so on. But he claimed that aliens had been taking him up into their spaceship and doing experiments on him, as he put it. So when they came to Earth and were attacking Earth, he's the man that's going to ultimately save the world. And because his missiles wouldn't work, and he's the only missile left, and he's going to take it direct into the spaceship. Well, there was one thing that he said as he was going to do that, and he looks up at the spaceship and he says, "Karma's a bitch, ain't it?" And I'll never forget those words, because I thought, boy, I've used karma a lot, over the years. It's true. Well, this is... Karma, I think, has a lot to do with what I'm going to be talking about here, and this has to do with the American Disabilities Act and an attorney by the name of Scott Johnson. Now, a number of years ago, when I first was on the radio, he had sued, there was actually some other attorneys in this too, but they had sued the Squeeze Inn in Sacramento and a number of other places. Recently, they hit like 5 or 6, Scott Johnson had hit 5 or 6 businesses in another small town outlying Sacramento. And it just goes on and on and on. He has actually filed over 2,100 of these ADA lawsuits, putting businesses and small businesses at risk or just flat closing their door. Matter of fact, one of the latest ones is kind of interesting, because this article came out October 1st. Longtime Land Park restaurant Ford's Real Burgers shuts down. And their ultimate purpose was, they'd been having some financial difficulties, but the owner said the last straw was when Carmichael attorney Scott N. Johnson, who is quadriplegic, wrote a letter to the restaurant about 2 months ago citing its failures under the American Disabilities Act, including its lack of a disabled parking space and a restroom that could accommodate wheelchair access. Says Johnson, who acknowledges filing thousands of ADA compliance lawsuits, said Sunday that he did not get a response from the restaurant and subsequently filed suit. So anyway, it goes on, it says, what business operators and property owners need to know is that they have only to do what they can afford to do, Johnson said, or what is readily achievable. Not true. Scott Johnson is one of these. There's a number of attorneys that are doing this, but he's one of them that over the years has put so many small mom-and-pop businesses out of business. It's an extortion letter he sends to them. It's basically, well, you know what, pay me $4,000 or $5,000 and this can all go away. And guess what? It doesn't go away if they can't pay. And many of them just say, you know what, I can't go this direction. They close their doors, and I know businesses that have done that. Well, karma has come around, and it has struck Scott Johnson. And we're going to talk about that when we come back, but I'm hoping he ends up behind bars, folks, in his wheelchair, because this guy is a piece of work. He has put so many small businesses out of business. He has cost him hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits, and frankly, just his extortion methods in paying money to him directly, and nothing ever really happens, just that they've been out that money. It's extortion. So we're going to talk about karma when we come back, and Scott Johnson. This is a fascinating story. You're listening to Mark Montgomery, and we'll be right back.
The Mark Montgomery Show.
Welcome back, folks. I'm Mark Montgomery, and we're talking about karma, right now. And Attorney Scott Johnson is going to experience this on what karma is all about. And this is one of many, many thousands of businesses that Scott Johnson has affected as one of these litigious, ambulance chaser, extortionist attorneys, that I call them. But Ford's Burgers in Land Park in Sacramento is closing down now because Scott Johnson filed a lawsuit against them. They've been right on the fence financially. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. They just said, you know what, we're closing our doors. So more jobs. Another tax-paying business out of business because of Scott Johnson. Well, who is Scott Johnson? Well, I first ran into Scott Johnson a while back when he had filed some various lawsuits against businesses. Forest Hill wanted to be one of the latest, and he hit about 5 or 6 businesses up there. I've had him on my radio program. And I just thought, boy, this guy is just a real piece of work. I can understand if a person goes into a building, and quite honestly, I also believe that older buildings should be grandfathered in. If they go through major renovation, that's a different story. Fine, bring some things up to date. But to go into an older establishment that's been there for years, and you've got a door that's an 1/8 of an inch off, or you've got a toilet that isn't quite as easily accessible, in the building, whatever it may be, so be it. If it's an old building, but what these attorneys do, like Scott Johnson, and this is supposedly they do this. Scott Johnson, a paraplegic, wheels his wheelchair in. He'll measure the width of a door or the ability to go to the restroom, to turn his wheelchair around, and a ramp that goes into a place if it's too steep of a slope or there's some bumps or whatever it may be. He is going to find some way. He carries around a ruler and he measures, it's off a 1/16 of an inch, has a little leveler that he'll put down and see if the slope is off. I mean, all these little things that have, by the way, already in most cases been approved, if those improvements are there, by cities. So, but this isn't about really rectifying a problem. Matter of fact, he could care less. This is all about extorting money out of the business. Well, Scott Johnson was just hit with a sexual harassment lawsuit. Now, many of these are kind of, in my opinion, sometimes kind of borderline once in a while. Not this one. So I'm going to read a little bit of this, and I hope you don't mind, because it is hard hitting on what he is going to be faced with. It says, Scott Johnson, the quadriplegic attorney who has sued more than 2,100 businesses for violating his civil rights, finds himself on the receiving end of a lawsuit that sheds harsh light on his legal practice. 4 former legal assistants employed by Johnson, all women, have filed suit in Sacramento County Superior Court claiming sexual harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Not just one, folks, 4 over a period of time that have worked for Scott Johnson. It says, according to the complaint, all 4 women claim they were fired or otherwise forced out of their jobs at Johnson's Carmichael home office this summer for complaining about the hostile work environment. Now, I know probably many of you are going, yeah, right, what? They're just looking for money. Well, listen up. I'm not going to go into who the plaintiffs are here, but anyway, it says the women said they were only allowed to work as legal assistants after they spent approximately 2 weeks in personal care training. Now, these are legal assistants, folks. They're coming out of college and so on, and he hires them as legal assistants. Their training consists of learning to dress and undress their boss. Says they claim their duties include placing Johnson in a hot tub and rubbing lotion on his body. Now, these are legal assistants. The women said the intimate contact made them uncomfortable, but they were initially afraid to complain for fear of retaliation. The lawsuit also claims the women were constantly under video surveillance, which included a camera aimed at the restroom to monitor how much time they spent there. Says when it came time to hire staff, this person, I'm not going to give names out again, the most senior assistant involved in the lawsuit said Johnson told her, this is a good one, not to interview men, ugly women, and anyone over 30, regardless of their qualifications. Little discrimination there. Says the former legal assistants also offer insight into allegations that, contrary to his claims, Johnson never personally visited many of the businesses he has sued under the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, that's a critical point. And that also means, I believe, and actually I said this a while back, that he possibly, if I were a small business and I had been sued by him, I think I would probably join a class action to come back at him now with what is coming out and prove that he was even in my place. He has to have been able to say that I had this problem. I could not turn around in the restroom or whatever. He can't just say, well, hey, somebody said. So, goes on, says the women said they would accompany Johnson in his van for field work, during which he would send them into a business as customers to look for ADA violations. So he didn't go in. He just sent his legal assistants in. Says he would call such actions a visit to the property even if he never left the van, the lawsuit claims. The woman said they were uncomfortable going into a business under a ruse and felt as though they were committing fraud. They were, as far as I'm concerned, but said they were paid a bonus for the field work. So basically he was giving them a bonus to commit a form of fraud. Says the lawsuit also claims Johnson recruited and subsidized rent for disabled students who lived in apartment complexes he was interested in suing. So he would subsidize rents to students so they would live somewhere and then turn around and file suit against the facility they were living at, that complex, for money. Says the former legal assistants are seeking an unspecified money judgment against Johnson along with a court order that he discontinue conduct alleged in the lawsuit. Johnson did not immediately respond to a request seeking comment. Legal analysis. Former federal prosecutor, veteran criminal attorney, Bill Portanova, read the complaint and called the allegations very serious. If these people had been hired to be nursemaids to him, that would be one thing. In other words, if they were really hired as caregivers, that would be a whole different ballgame. But they were hired as legal assistants. It says, but when they're young, professional students in law school looking to be law clerks, and they're hired to be law students, but they're forced to go through 2 weeks of naked physical handling of the boss. Says I can honestly say I've never heard of that happening in any law office before, Portanova said. As for never personally visiting many of the businesses he sued, Portanova said the legal action could shed new light on Johnson's ADA lawsuits, thousands of them. Says in cases that are active right now, attorneys and purported defendants are probably going to take a much closer look at what they've been accused of before they give in and just pay the price to settle these lawsuits. Now, my question also is, there have been so many complaints against Scott Johnson and other attorneys like Scott Johnson. Where's the state bar been? Matter of fact, even lawmakers not long ago, and I brought this up on my radio show, not long ago people were complaining about Scott Johnson, that he was too litigious. And there is something in the legal jargon that says if you're overly litigious, that you can be disbarred, frankly. And they basically came out, these are our own lawmakers, and says, oh, no, he's not overly litigious here. Nope, he doesn't file enough lawsuits to come under this overly litigious clause. So anyway, the other one is Where have all these lawmakers been through all these years that we have tried to get ADA reform in the state of California? Now, luckily, Jerry Brown just signed kind of a step in the right direction, I'll put it that way. It's still much lighter than it needs to be, but at least it may kind of put a little crimp on attorneys like Scott Johnson. So, bottom line is our lawmakers, again, need to pay more attention because it's attorneys like Scott Johnson that are causing businesses to close their doors, cost jobs, and also for people, other businesses thinking of coming into California, thinking twice about how litigious California is and again, the legal cost of doing business in the state of California. It's just another one of those many, many cuts just bleeding us dry here in the state of California. And just as another side note, before we go approving taxes such as Prop 30, think about this. If Prop 30 were to pass, we have numerous cities throughout the state of California that are close to bankruptcy that are also looking at increasing taxes. There, if the Democrats, the progressive liberals, get a supermajority in the Senate, your property taxes are going to end up going up. We are looking at federal taxes going up. And it's not just Jerry Brown's tax or somebody's tax that we have to look at. It is the whole enchilada we've got to be looking at on how much is going to be taken out of our pocket in the form of taxes is if all these various bills, or just a few of them, are passed. So the answer is vote no on Prop 30. Vote yes on Prop 32 if you are interested in turning the dynamics around in the state of California when it comes to the government unions. Now, they're basically saying, oh, this is just going to devastate them. Well, let me tell you one little fact here real quick. The yes on Prop 32 supporting that union members have choices has put about 10 million out. The opposition to it has put something like 45 million out now. Unions have a lot of money. So, folks, I just want to reinforce the fact I'm no longer on the radio. I will be back on the radio on KSTE 650 come January 5th. I hope you join me. It'll be very clear up here. I'm Mark Montgomery, signing out.
The Mark Montgomery Show.